So again, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Remy, back again on the mBlock5 SteamonBoard online training series. Today we're in week 4 of 8, and we're excited to have you back. For those of you who are returning, it's great to see the continued learning and delving deeper that we're doing together. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome to this training series. And again, all the resources, we've been trying to send it in the regular emails, but they're also all available on this one webpage, logicsacademy.com/SteamonBoard. So if you could take a few minutes and go to logicsacademy.com/SteamonBoard, and you scroll down, you'll see this Educator Resources section. Here, if you click, you'll be able to open up the software that we've been using. If you haven't already downloaded it, you'll be able to join the mBlock5 discussion in the Logics Educator community. So that this is where you can engage in the discussion with our group. And then here is where you can upload to the mBlock5 global community. This is planet.mblock.cc, where you can log in, upload projects, and share to the community. And then, of course, the Google Classroom integration for tutorial slides and video that we went over last week. As well, all of our lesson material that we're using aligned to provincial standards are here for lessons 1 through 4. Today, we're going to be doing lesson 4. So take a few minutes right now, if you haven't already done so, to click on download curriculum material right under lesson 4. And that would open up a link with the content. So here you'll see that we have lesson 4, walk in place, which is the name of today's lesson, the lesson plan, as well as the PDF and the PowerPoint version of the slide deck, as well as a folder called example programs, and where you can actually download those files that Mina will be sharing with us and using in the lesson. So again, another reminder that we went over last week, to download these documents, you can download each one by one, or you can download the whole folder by just downloading clicking on the download link, and that will download a zipped folder on your downloads folder, and then you have to unzip the whole thing and then save it in your local network or on your own Google Classroom or OneDrive or wherever you want to store your files for the future. Again, our goal through this series is that we're offering you this content and that you can use it today, but of course you can use it in the future with your students and other teachers in your school or other teachers and colleagues that you have. So this is all available for free thanks to our virtual training series and brought to you by our remote learning. Again, we have a number of programs going on through our virtual training series. So if you go on logicsacademy.com/virtual training, you'll be able to see a number of topics in Minecraft, in English and French. We have a number of new Teams topics, as well as a new series in the best of robotics and coding with some awesome partners in Canada that are available. So I would encourage you to take a moment, see if any of these topics are of interest to you, and you can sign up for the upcoming weeks. And join there. We'll be adding a lot more in the weeks to come with even some of you folks. So stay tuned for that. We're working the best we can to get as much available for you to learn and engage soon. And lastly, of course, the SteamonBoard program that you're all part of. So again, all that's available on the SteamonBoard page, and you can join and participate and engage in all this awesome training. So to answer the question earlier, if you weren't able to access that sharing of your files, again, you can come to the SteamonBoard and click this global mBlock community link, and that will take you to this page here where you can log in, use your account if you've signed up. It's the same as the mBlock account, or if you haven't, you can create a new account. And this is where you can download other people's projects, upload your projects that we've been doing and Mina's been going over as part of the sharing. Great. I thought we'd start right away early today. That way it would give us more time for questions at the end. I know there's all and more hands-on. So I'll turn it over to Mina to walk us through today's lesson and then give us a little bit more time at the end to go through questions and answers one by one. So looking forward to working with all of you there.
All right. Thanks so much, Rami. Good to have everyone back. And for those that are joining us for the first time, welcome. So if you haven't done so, just download those files that Rami was mentioning in on the SteamonBoard link. And I'm just going to quickly show you the different types of files as I share my screen here with everyone. The different type of files that you will notice as you are downloading and unzipping and doing all this neat stuff. You'll see, yeah, my screen is being shared here. Excellent. Let me just get this folder open. You'll see that there's quite a different number and types of files, and you can see that there's the types available there. So there's a PDF to the lesson, there's a PDF to the PowerPoint, and there's also the PowerPoint slide deck that you could potentially use in your classrooms. And in this specific lesson, in lesson 4, there is a flipbook animation which will open shortly and show you how that is working. And finally, in the example programs, these are all mBlock5 project files. So when you double click or you open these files, these will be opening in mBlock5. So just a variety of different files that you have access to when you're downloading the curriculum there. So I hope you had some fun last week when you created that welcome to Earth party for Panda by including some transformations, 3 transformations using your keyboard, your events there to trigger those transformations, and we took a look at that last week. And I hope that you were able to complete some of the extensions as well as upload it to the global community of Planet mBlock.cc there. It's under the Created Studio. So I just popped in and checked what's available there, and I do see a lot of great projects available. So keep it up, and we'll continue to keep adding to that resource. So just for a recall from last week, we learned how to program Panda to showcase its hidden talent of being able to transform and transfigure into very neat figures in mBlock. And we also learned how to use the keyboard to input this change of transformations and trigger some events. And we learned some events last week. And as always, as a reminder, I'll be wearing a couple of hats to give you one teacher tips, as well as going through the lesson together and how do you make these projects with your students. So today in lesson 4, it's called Walk in Place. We'll continue our story of using Panda, but this time we'll teach him how to walk. He actually doesn't know how to walk. So because he's new to Earth, he's not used to walking. So we're going to get him to start walking today, which is really exciting for us. And we're going to break the walking into the walking procedure rather into 2 different lessons. So kind of like lesson 4 gets Panda to walk in place, and then lesson 5 next week will get Panda to actually move across the screen as he's walking, so just to simulate that walking procedure. So we're gonna be using we're gonna continue using the looks menu as we have in the past, and that's just kind of like a hint for what's coming up today. As always, we'll open up the lesson plan and quickly go over what is being covered in the plan. As you can see, It's still beginner. It's still 45 minutes and within the subject of computer science. And the objectives, you'll see that there's new concepts that you are learning, that your students as well as yourself, you're learning today. Some of these concepts include costumes. We're going to learn how to animate the sprite or the Panda sprite using costumes. We're going to locate and use the costumes interface. We're also going to learn loops and how to integrate loops in the walking of Panda. Part of loops, we're going to identify the difference between forever loops and repeat blocks, as well as also look at wait control blocks. So a lot to do there, and a lot of hands-on that we're going to try to work through today. In addition, there's the overview in every lesson. You're going to be exploring 2D digital animation on mBlock5. So that's going to be really cool for you and your students, hopefully in the classroom, whether virtually or in person. And you'll also learn to give sprites appearance of movement. So they appear like they're moving, but they're actually just changing costumes, which we'll see in a minute. And you'll also examine loops and how to control the flow of a program using wait blocks as well. And in addition, you also have your standards. So you have your global standards, CSTA and ISTE standards, as well as the provincial standards available to you there. So this is not new. We've been doing this since lesson 1. So I hope you're able to check those out. So I'm just going to pop into the lesson, the actual PowerPoint, and we're going to go through the warm-up together just to review what we did last week. So if you remember last week, you were able to create different transformations for your Panda. And these are just some examples of programs and what the effect will look like on there. Now I'm using the PDF version. You won't see Panda change or transform in any way. But if you were to open the actual PowerPoint slides, the slide deck there, you will see that the program effect, you'll see that Panda is doing whatever the example program is available here on the left. So we can read quickly this program together to review. It starts with an event, and this event is when space key is pressed. So you need to trigger the remainder of the code using the space bar on your keyboard. And Panda will say, it's too hot, I'm going to bloat for 2 seconds. He will change his size, so he will increase his size, and we saw how to use positive and negative numbers in our transformations last week. He'll change his size by 10, and then he will say, I'm about to melt for 2 seconds, and then he will go through another transformation, which is pixelate. And this effect is also changed by a positive value of 25. So that's one example there. Another example is another example using an up arrow on the keyboard that triggers this the remainder of the code as an event. Panda says it's too cold. He changes his size by -10, so you can see that he shrinks. And then he says, I'm freezing my toes off, and starts to transform in a mosaic type of pattern. So this is just a quick recap or review of what we did last week. So I hope you're able to try those out on your own, and feel free to message in the chat to ask any questions about the review there. Now, to introduce lesson 4 rather, I'm just maybe jumping ahead into the next week. We're going to introduce this as 2D animation or flipbook animation. So if you can write in the chat, does anyone know what flipbook animation is, or how maybe how it works. So if we pop in the chat, so has anyone created a flipbook animation before? And I just want to see if has anyone done that recently or in the past. And yeah, it's as you can see there, it's a series of images that change slightly, exactly. And again, yeah, like a cartoon. A lot of cartoons are the basic ones, like the 2D animation ones, are changed page by page. And they, as you flip this book, you will see that animation really come to life. I'll show you an example that is in your PowerPoint, as well as this quick GIF. You'll see that once this GIF starts to play, the animation is coming to life. So you can see a lot of GIFs on whether it's social media, Instagram or Twitter. We use a lot of that there. I don't know why mine is not working there. I'm going to try to open it again. But you can see that these GIFs are exactly like flipbook animations, and they're able to change in slightly from one page to another, or from one frame to another. That's another vocabulary that that you may see being used. And you can see there that as you're flipping the flipbook, you'll see that little magician there being eaten by what he's switched, or what he did there. So really neat things that we're going to be doing today using mBlock5 and using animations and costumes. So we just saw that flipbook animation together, and we're going to dive into 2D animations with you all. So in the lesson plan, I'm just going to pop in there. You will notice that there are 4 different images that are available in the actual PowerPoint, the PowerPoint presentation, not the PDF version. And you'll see that these images are slightly different. So if you look at these 4 images, you will notice that each image is slightly different. And even if you look at the 3rd image, it looks like this blowfish is winking. So you'll see that, he smiles, he has like a straight face, he winks, and then blows some bubbles. So if you were to run this in sequence, if you were to run this from beginning to end, you will see that this animation is coming to life, like this flip book that we just saw. So really neat way that we're going to use animation. And this is a nice hook to introduce this to your learners in the classroom, whether virtually or in person. So just continuing on the PowerPoint here, we are going to start opening mBlock5 right away and showing you the costume interface. So I'm going to move into mBlock5, and feel free to open a new file there. And we're going to go through mBlock5 costume interface. So just a reminder, when you do open mBlock5 there, you start in a default tab called Devices. Now, some of you may have run into some problems where you couldn't add specific blocks, and the reason being is that you may have started as devices but never switched into sprites. And so we want to be able to switch to sprites. And as soon as you switch to the sprites, you'll see that there is an option at the bottom there. You have costumes and you also have sound. So we're going to focus on costumes today. And if you click on it, as I'm doing here, you'll see that this costume interface comes into play. Now there's a lot that is happening there. And there's a couple of things that I wanted to point out in this costume interface. Number one is that you'll notice that there's different sprites available within the original Panda sprite that you have. So if you see here, sorry, you don't have different sprites, you have different costumes of this one sprite. So you'll see here that you have costume 1 of Panda and you have costume 2. And just take a minute and click between costume 1 and costume 2. And in the chat, please type in what you see the difference is between costume 1 and costume 2. So take a minute and kind of click between those and type in the chat what you notice Panda is doing. Excellent. Yeah, I see one Kara says it's Panda is walking. There's slight leg movement. Absolutely. So I'll do this again so you can see what's happening. So you'll see movements of the hands as well as the feet. And it's literally just 2 different frames or 2 different costumes of Panda that you are going to be switching from. Now, this is kind of tedious. Now, we don't want to be clicking between costumes. We want to actually write a program to help us, move from one costume to another. And I gave a hint already. We are going to stick to the looks menu or the looks category in the script area, and we'll use that in just a minute. Another thing I wanted to mention and show you in the interface is that when you are in the costume interface already, your costumes button that was originally there is now turned into an X. And this is kind of like an exit or to leave this interface area. And when you click on this X, you will now go back to the sprite or the script area that we were originally in. So let's continue by creating this program to help Panda walk on its own using, and not by clicking and switching these costumes together, but by actually writing a program in mBlock5. So I've just clicked on the X there. Just to quickly go back, there's a lot more that you can see here. You can actually edit the different costumes within a particular sprite. So a lot of kind of paint tools like a paint bucket, text, erase, paintbrush, filling colors, a lot of neat options available if you want to explore that a little bit more to change how the sprites or these costumes look. So very, very powerful tool, as you can imagine, but we won't be diving into that today. So just a little bit of context in what we're doing today. And this is actually from the lesson plan, if you want to jump there and see that. But this is exactly from there. It says, with our help, Panda was able to speak and showcase transformations to new friends on Earth. Where Panda is from, creatures teleport. So Panda does not know how to walk. Let's begin by programming Panda to walk in place. And this is kind of like a small script that you can share with your learners to get them into this this guided practice session or the hands-on session of the lesson there. I'm going to pop back into the PowerPoint to show you where we left off there. And we did this together. We step 1, 2, and 3 to show you the different costumes. And now we get into the hands-on portion. And we're going to be doing this. We're going to be creating this program in 3 different, using 3 different concepts. The first one is switching costumes there. So the first kind of knowledge that we want to learn together is that it's found under the block area of looks. It's the block that we're going to be using today is called next costume. And the function is when a sprite has multiple costumes, it will switch the sprite costume to the next one. And here's an example on the far right to show you what happens when you press the space key event and you have a next costume attached to it. Now, we're gonna do this together to help you understand how this works, and then we'll go back to the second concept as well as the third concept in the PowerPoint. So I know I'm switching back and forth a lot, but it's very helpful to go through the PowerPoints, but also get our hands on. So again, if you remember, the events category has all our events that we have used. We use the when flag is clicked, but we've also used the when spacebar key is pressed. And remember, if you were to drag it into your script area and you click on the drop-down menu, you will see all the different keyboard triggers that you can initiate your code with. So I'm going to keep it with the spacebar key for now. And if we go back to looks, it would be the block that we need. If you remember from the example, we would need the next costume block. So if you drag that into your script area, and just a reminder, you'll see that this gray highlight is coming up. That just shows you that you're ready to connect. Now, even if you put it somewhere other than close to your other block, you can just, again, click and drag it and connect. Now, the other thing before I press the event there is, and maybe I can ask everyone in the chat, if my sprite only has one costume, will anything happen when I use my next costume block? So this is kind of like a trick question for you, and you can ask that to your learners as well. If my sprite only has one costume, will anything happen? So feel free to type that in the chat as we're going along. So I don't want to be able to, like, if I was to maybe just click on the next costume block, it's really tedious. Again, you can see that I'm clicking on it. There's that yellow highlight that shows up, and you can see Panda walking, but this is really tedious. So we want to be able to press the space bar key, and that will trigger the event for us to get Panda to switch costumes and move on to the next one. So this is part of example 1 in your files. If you were to open that, you will see the exact same code that's available there. So one of you mentioned that, yes, it does refresh the same costume. So really, it doesn't do anything. It stays as it is. It's only one costume. If you had one costume in that sprite, it really doesn't do anything there. So that is the first concept of next costume. So I hope this makes a little bit more sense now that we have tested it with an event. Now we're going to jump into loops. So going back to our PowerPoint, we're going to jump into the loops concept of today. And if you haven't heard of loops, or if you have in the past, loops are a repeated execution of a particular set of code. And you can see on the right there, you have a forever loop. So we're going to explore 2 different types of loops and talk about the difference between them there. So next slide here shows this exact difference. And you'll see that there's a new area that we may have not explored yet, or you may have not explored yet, and this is called the control. And then all of these blocks within control basically control the movements or the blocks that refer to the sprite. So it has a lot of controlling features involved here. we'll talk about the forever loop. So the forever loop continuously repeats the blocks nested inside it. We use the term nested, kind of like a nest, and you can see that there's an available block that can fit within this forever loop, and that kind of nests inside. The other type of loop that you can see there is a repeat loop, and repeat a certain number of times. So in this case, it repeats 10 times and then it stops. And this is kind of going back to maybe the first or second lesson where we saw say and say for 2 seconds. So say and forever runs the code indefinitely and until you press the red stop button on mBlock5, versus say for 2 seconds and repeat for 10 times. You can this will stop after it has said or repeated the code respectively. So you see an example on the right here that uses a forever loop, and it's triggered by a space key event. So let's build this code together as well in mBlock. So I'm going to go back here, and we can take out a different event to help us do this, but maybe we want to build upon what we already have, because a lot of programs are built upon each other. So now we get to go into control, and you have these two options that we just showed you on the PowerPoint. There's the forever loop, so let's take that out. And there's two ways that you can use or kind of connect those blocks together. The first way is you can just drag it into your script area, let it go, and then you can connect the blocks together. The second way is if you drag it and try to place it, it kind of forces its way into the event as well as the next costume block. And as soon as you let go of your mouse or your trackpad there, it fits nicely. So there's multiple ways to connect the blocks. We want the next costume to nest or fit inside the forever loop. So try this out, press the spacebar key, and you will see that Panda is switching to the next costume really fast. He might get tired at this point because he's switching his costume really fast. There's no other code in the forever loop. So it's literally just going next costume, next costume, next costume, etc. forever. So remember, if you want to stop this, if Panda is getting a bit tired here, you just click on the red stop button, and your whole script will now not be highlighted with yellow and just be and just stopping the script there. So he's pretty exhausted. Now we want to be able to get him to use a different type of forever loop, a loop just for a certain number of times. So let's take out the repeat 10 block, and we're going to create a new event for this. And feel free to use a different event. You don't have to use the same one that I am. I'm going to add the event when I click on, or when I press the up arrow. And you can also duplicate your code. If you remember how to duplicate code, you can just right click using your mouse, click on duplicate, and that is available to you there, and you can switch to repeat. So and then you can delete the code. So these are all things that we have done from lessons 1, 2, 3. So whichever way you want, whichever is easier for you, let's do this code together. And when you're ready, you click on the up arrow and notice what happens here. And please write in the chat what happens when you click on this next event that uses the repeat 10. What happens to Panda? So I'm going to test it again to show you. What happens there? Now, it's very different compared to the space bar, and I'm going to test the space bar as well. I'm going to stop that code. And if I press the up arrow, so yeah, and some of you are writing that he only walks or kind of repeats the next costume code only 10 times versus forever. And Heather's right, yeah, he stops after the repeat 10. So we want to be able to do something here. We want to be able to control his movements. And that is our next concept within our code, and that is wait. The wait blocks are really, really important in our code. So going back here to our PowerPoints, I'm going to switch over. So the wait blocks are really important to use in our programming, and it's again found in control, and it pauses the program and waits a specific amount of time before the next set of instructions or the next set of code comes into place. So you can see in this example here, you have repeat 10, next costume, and then wait. And then you can see that you also have decimals involved. So you just an FYI for everyone, you can definitely use fractions or decimals in wait. However, you cannot repeat a fraction of times. Sorry, a fraction of repeating code. So you can only do whole numbers in repeat versus you can do fractions or decimals in wait times. So let's build this code together, and there's the steps available for you there. We're just going to add a we're going to add a wait block within both our two codes that we just created. So again, in control, we're going to take out wait, and we're going to put underneath both our codes there, underneath the next costume block. And this is something that you can get your learners to really think about this and think about what matters most. Do we want to wait before the next costume is placed, or within the repeat or the forever loops? So you can get them to try this out and observe the different changes that Panda is going through. And again, you can try to use different wait times. I'm going to use 0.25 and 0.5. And feel free to write in the chat here if you have a minute to see the difference between, and this is for everyone, what is the difference between a 0.5 seconds versus 0.25 seconds in terms of Panda's movements? Is it moving faster or slower? What's happening there with Panda's movements as we introduce the wait block? So I'm going to click on the space. I'm going to click on the space key. And we're going to see what's happening there. And I'm also going to do the up arrow just to get that working here. I'm not sure why it's not initiating on my end, but what you should be seeing here is that before the next costume is switched, you're going to, or Panda is going to wait 0.5 seconds and then go back and switch to the next costume. So costume 1, wait 0.5 seconds, costume 2, etc. So thank you, Bridget. You are right. He walks a little bit faster when you have a smaller number, 0.25, versus he walks slower when you have a higher numbers like 0.5. So you can talk about this difference in relation to our positive and negative values that we learned last week, and talk about the difference between smaller numbers and bigger numbers in the weight blocks. So I hope this is a quick introduction into how to use switch costumes, loops, as well as the weight blocks that you're going to be using for your code. Now, going back to the PowerPoint here, we're just going to sum everything up with your actual or your own independent practice. So this is the try it portion of the lesson plan. And this is what we would like to see do as best as you can. The examples are there also in the files that you have downloaded. I believe it's the example either 3 or the project file. But we want you to be able to do the following. So walk in place. So Panda says, I can walk in place, and then starts moving. So that's number 1. Then number 2, get Panda while moving to shout out the costume of number 1 or number 2. And then finally, add an appropriate background for Panda as he's walking in place. So those are the independent practice, or this is the independent practice challenge for your learners, but also for you to try and put on on the mBlock global community there. If your learners they need a little bit more extensions, we have that available for you. You can see that you can add after Panda walks in place a number of times, say I can stand still, and then takes 2 steps before stopping completely. So that's an extension. Add transformation, so you can incorporate lesson 3 into this and add different events, as you can see there. As we wrap up, I'm just going to go into the review or the wrap up portion of the lesson plan. And we're going to go through this together as we've always been doing in the chat. So pop into the chat and let's answer these 3 questions together. I'm going to hopefully help you through this. So number 1, which of the following blocks is not in the control block area? Which one is not in the control block area? Perfect. So I see, yeah, I see a lot of D's, so correct. D is not in the control block. This one is under events. And you can see by the color, all the wait, forever, repeat are orange versus the events color coded is yellow there. Excellent. Question number 2, which block area does the next costume belong to? So this might be easier because it is color coded. And I can't see the difference, but yes, D is the answer again for number 2 because it's under looks and it has the same purple color there for you to, and for your learners to make that connection. Question number 3, as we finish up here, which of the following codes can make the sprite say, I'm fine for 3 times, or I'm fine 3 times? Is it A, B, C, or D? So take a minute and read through that code. And I'm going to help you read through this as you're writing there. I see a lot of different options, and this was, I know usually in multiple choice questions the right answer is C, or when in doubt you choose C, but in this case when in doubt choose D. So D is the right answer, and the reason being, and this is something that you can model with your students or with your learners, that you need to read over your code. Read over your code. So I'm going to read A, B, and C and talk about why D is correct. So as we read, it says for A, when flag is clicked, say I'm fine for 2 seconds. So that's your first fine, and then says I'm fine forever. So that's 2. So A is not the correct answer. B only says I'm fine for 3 seconds. So that's only one time Panda is saying I'm fine. So B is not correct. C says I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, but repeat this 3 times. So in reality, Panda is saying I'm fine 30 times. So C is not correct. And then finally, D is the right answer because he is actually saying I'm fine 3 times, and he's not too tired as saying it 30 times in part C. So D is the correct answer there. So it really helps to read the code with your learners and go from top to bottom and talk about what may or may not be working with them as they are building their codes. And if it's not working, if Jimmy says, I don't know why my Panda is not saying fine 3 times, well, read it, ask them to read it over from top to bottom and figure out and problem solve where the issue is in the code. So this is a great example to do with your learners, and you'll be able to model this with them. So that leads me into the end of that lesson. So lesson 4 is all wrapped up. And just shortly before I pass it on to Rami for Q&A, just a reminder that if you go into the mBlock5 website, so mblock.cc, you will notice that there is a community page that you would click on. I just have all these pages open so that you can see that. When you open the community page, you're going to scroll all the way down to this curated studio, so MakeBlock SteamonBoard Studio. And when you click on that, and hopefully you have a username and password already for mBlock to log in. So you should see your profile and your avatar there. The main, how do you get it on the studio is just click on add a project. And what you are pasting here is the link that you would generate once you have shared it on the cloud or on your profile, that you will create a kind of like a particular link in the address bar that you can copy and paste into the studio here. And as soon as you click on contribute, you will see the your actual project on there. So right now there's about 37 projects that have been contributed by various teachers around the world that are doing this training here. So that's all for me. I'm going to pass it on to Rami for Q&A, and we'll go on for the rest of the time here.
Great, thank you so much, Mina, for leading us through that. And we have just shy of 10 minutes for question and answer. So I'll turn it to the floor. Anyone attending, if you have any questions about this lesson specifically, a concept we covered today, or about the series in general, or maybe something we covered last week or the week before that wasn't 100% clear. Yeah, we have lots of time to discuss together and chat from there. And again, always as a reminder, you're able to continue the conversation after today by going on the Logix Educator community and asking there, even if you don't remember today. I see a first one, Claire, go ahead. I see you have a question.
Hi, Remy. I'm asking because the Panda's sprite can work because it looks it's working because it changed its costume. But how can I scroll the background to it so it can looks like it's walking along a street or whatever, or wherever?
Yeah, great question. So you're saying you've created different costumes of Panda walking, but how can you have a background that looks like this? It's a scroll or a street walking across. I understand your question. Yeah, I'll turn it over to Mina to share that and even potentially share his screen and walk us through that. And while we're doing that, if you have other questions, feel free to ask in the chat so we can prep and answer while Mina is demonstrating this one.
Okay, thanks, Remy.
Yeah, so absolutely. Great question. Just a reminder that today we just focused on Panda to walk in place.
Yes.
So we're just getting him to walk in place tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm just again ahead of myself. Next week, we will get Panda to move across the screen as he is walking in place. But I just wanted to show you here. I am sharing my screen, so I hope you can see that right now. It may take a second to load, but there were 3 tabs. There were 3 tabs as you are navigating through mBlock5. The first tab is the default one that's called Devices. Okay, so devices we haven't used yet at all, and we've always gone into Sprites. So we've been using Sprites so far and today we also use the costumes. The third tab is the background. So if you click on background, and I think this was, I think lesson 2 or 3, I can't recall, where we were able to add costumes. You can click on background and click on costumes, just like very similar to Sprites than costumes.
Yes.
You're going to open a library of costumes for the background. So I know it says costumes again, but you can see that all the different, and just one final step before you do that, it's the add backdrop there, which is at the bottom. So when you click on add backdrop, then this library will open up for you. Okay. Mine is just loading a little bit slower, so it will take some time. But does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. Because next week you will show us how to let the sprite working with a scrolling background. So yeah, I will follow you next week.
Correct. Yeah, and the main, after you've chosen a background, so I'm gonna maybe choose one like the bus station because it has like a road there and it's easier to navigate on. So once you click on the costume, click on OK, or the background, sorry. Click on OK, and automatically you'll have the backdrop change for you from all white to the costume or the background that you just have chosen. And if you recall, you can just click on Panda and move him around the screen to put him on the sidewalk.
Okay.
So a lot of kids can have fun and put him on the bench and get him walking on the bench, but you can put him on the sidewalk, and we're going to simulate that walking next week.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Remy. Thanks, Mina.
No problem.
Mina, if you could also, while you're here, just demonstrate how to add devices, and then Jamie, we can follow up with you after for more. I see your question here, but you can also explore the lessons for devices. So Mina, maybe if you can open and demonstrate how to add a device, and then Jamie, you can check out the actual lesson plans at learn.logicsacademy.com as well for each hardware.
All right, so very quickly, to add devices, you're going to click on the Devices tab and then click on Add. Now, the default one that comes up is Cody Rocky, but you can definitely click on the X button there to delete that device essentially, and then open or add a new device to mBlock5 that you can integrate there. So you can see that I've just clicked on Add, and you can see the device library that is available to you here. There's so much more that you can add to. It's just loading here. So you have Halo Code, MBOTS, Neuron. Arduino Uno, all these different devices that you can add, and I'm just scrolling down to show you the power of mBlock5 that you have. So yeah, it is super cool. Really, really comprehensive that you can add different devices. You can see that you need to maybe update a particular device before you add to it. Just recently I added a Halo code, but I needed to update it. So you'll see that green arrow that shows you that you need to update. Once you select that particular device, you click on OK and add that to your devices tab and start using. I'm just going to click on Halo code because that's updated for me, just to show you the different blocks that are available to you once you add that device. So I'm just loading here, and you'll see that in Halo code, it changes from, you have like your very similar ones like events, control, but they are related to that device. Okay, but you also have new ones like lighting because it has LEDs. You have sensing because it has touch and sound. So a lot of different new blocks that come up with the particular device that you are going to use. So I hope that answers your question, Jamie.